once again, and I'm making another video about that car right there. It's going to take a little story. So, around the middle of November last year, the clutch finally went out, which is to be expected because it has 239,000 miles and it's been driven quite a bit. So, after calling around for a few shops, most of them were quoting me about $800 to $900 for a clutch, which at the time I could not afford. $800 to $900 is hard to come up with. So, after doing a little bit more searching, I found a shop that would charge a slightly lower rate. Instead of $100 an hour for labor, they would charge $80 an hour, and would let me bring in my own parts. Most other places wouldn't let you do that because of bullshit reasons. So anyway, at 6 there, everybody's quoting me a 6-hour job. So six at $80 an hour is $480, around $500. I found a sweet deal on eBay for a performance clutch. It was a ban-off performance clutch for about $109 or $110, $15, something like that. So anyway, between all the two, I can get the whole thing done for close to $600 instead of $900. Good deal. So I take it to a shop, and that would have been, I think, November 17th. And a few days later, they got it done. It took them a couple extra days because the throwout bearing was all fucked up and stuff like that, and those are kind of difficult. So anyway, whenever I picked up the car, clutch worked fine. The only problem was there was this horrible scraping noise when the car moved. And the guys told me about it. They said, yeah, it's just probably your output bearing on your transmission, whatever the hell that means. But those things can last for years. It's fine. But it just was steady grinding. It was kind of embarrassing because when I pull up, people are like, dude, you need to do your brakes. So it sounded like grinding brakes. So eventually I pulled the wheel off. I couldn't handle it anymore. Pulled the wheel off. Sure as hell, it was just the dust guard for the brake dust rubbing up against the rotor. If I had known how easy it was, I could have just not even pulled the wheel off and pulled the dust guard back with my bare hands, which is actually what I did once the wheel was off. So, but when I was under there, I noticed that one of the castle nuts for the steering control arm didn't have a cotter pin in it. Well, if anybody knows anything about mechanics, cotter pins are there not just for decoration. They're there for a reason. It's because sometimes these bolts, especially with the steering arm that's moving back and forth, can work itself out. It didn't have a cotter pin in it, and I'll show you that in a little bit. If anybody has ever seen a car where the steering arm broke, you either go into a ditch or you come to a grinding halt right there in the middle of the road. It's bad news. So anyway, that's not so big of a deal. I can throw a cotter pin in there, big deal. Well, about exactly 1 month after I had the clutch fixed, it failed again. This time, it wouldn't disengage. It wasn't making a squealing noise. It wasn't grinding. It wasn't doing anything. Just, luckily I was at work. Shut the car off, went inside, go do a couple things, came back out. Suddenly, the car wouldn't go into gear. Couldn't get into gear for shit. Tried everything I could, so couldn't get into gear. So, luckily, I was at work, not stuck out on the road, so I was kind of fortunate for that. But anyway, when I turned the car off, I could get it into gear, and then when I pressed in the clutch and I started the car, it would pull forward like the clutch was not fully disengaged. Obviously, something's fucked up. I contacted the automotive shop, and because they said they warranty the work, but not the part. Well, every person that I talked to, and I've got a lot of mechanics in my family, has said that clutches don't just fail automatically after a month. I mean, at 1,500 miles, the first one, a crappy one from Hyundai, lasted 239,000, and this one lasted 1,500 miles. So I'm doubting it's the clutch. So I contacted the shop, and they said, oh, well, it sounds like a stacked clutch, which means a part of the clutch broke off and gets wedged in there, which I've never heard of that happening. No one's ever heard of that happening, but just he comes up with these random things. So I dropped it off. That would have been December 17th. On December 20th, they said that they couldn't inspect the clutch without pulling it all apart and asked my permission to go ahead and pull it apart. I said, well, you got to do what you got to do. That was December 20th. 4 solid weeks later, that would have been January 7th, I hadn't heard anything from them. They have my phone number. It's not like I'm hard to get a hold of. So I just walked into the shop and said, hey, remember me? 2006 Hyundai Tucson, clutch, ring a bell? And the lady just held her head. She's like, oh my God. So the mechanic came up with a list of problems. Oh, I've got this part, and I'm missing this part, and I've got this motor apart, and I don't have a lift for it, blah, 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 which obviously means they're slow playing it because they think they fucked up and they're going to have to do a freebie job, which I'm really thinking that's what was going on anyway. So now today is January 15th, which is a Tuesday. So here we are on 5 weeks, and the car is still sitting right there. So after 5 solid weeks of not starting the car, not worrying about anything, obviously the battery's dead. I came up here to check it out the other day, see if to start the car, keep going. Sure as hell, battery's nothing. So I went into the back of the car. Guess what? Jumper cables are gone. I had a pair of jumper cables in there. So I had to go all the way back home, get a pair of jumper cables, and come back here. And I'm going to pause it for right now, but I'll show you some of the things that I found. And I'll show you that cotter pin, lack of cotter pin later. But I'll show you a couple things that I found that kind of pissed me off. So anyway, I'll be back just a little bit.